It started with one small favor, one secret payment, one easy way out. He thought no one would ever know. But the price for silence is always higher than you think. You ever look at your bank account and feel your stomach drop, like your body knows something is about to go real wrong before your mind catches up? That was me on a Wednesday morning. I had $37.11 to my name. Rent was 6 days late. Power bill had the final notice taped to the door. The fridge? Almost empty, unless you count condiments and a single slice of bread. And my daughter, June, 8 years old, missing 2 front teeth, kept asking if we were still going to the school field trip next week. I told her yes. Lied right to her face. I did not used to be this guy. I had a decent job, steady hours at a small construction firm. Nothing fancy, but I showed up early, worked hard, brought my lunch in a cooler like a grown-up is supposed to. Then COVID hit, then layoffs, then cut hours. Next thing I knew, I was delivering groceries at night, selling old tools on Craigslist, and calculating whether ramen or canned chili gave you more calories per dollar. One night, I sat in my truck outside of Walgreens, trying to decide whether to buy my blood pressure meds or groceries. I chose the groceries. That night I passed out in the shower. June found me. Scared her bad. I promised her it would not happen again. But promises do not mean much when you are broke. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a text from a guy I used to know, Mason. We worked together years back, before he moved out west. He was always into side hustles. Not illegal stuff, just shady. Flipping insurance leads, filing consulting invoices for jobs that never really happened. Harmless on the surface, but always a little crooked under the hood. His message said, "Still looking for work? I got something. Not hard. Pays well. No questions asked." I should have ignored it. But instead, I typed, "Tell me more." That was the moment everything changed. What Mason offered was not flashy. He worked with this company doing process simplification, basically helping businesses cut costs, but in reality, it was glorified data scrubbing. We were meant to clean client books for audit prep, which mostly meant reclassifying expenses to look legal, even when they were not. Not criminal exactly, but not clean either. He told me it paid $2,000 a week. Remote. Flexible hours. I asked who the clients were. He said, "People who do not ask questions. So neither should you." I stared at the message for 10 minutes. $2,000 would cover rent, food, gas, June's trip, and leave some extra. I looked at my kids' sneakers, toes worn thin, and I told myself, just for a while, just until we are caught up. I said yes, and that was the first time I made money I could not talk about. The first job came through that Friday. Mason sent over a login and a spreadsheet, told me to log hours like I was working 10, even if I only worked 6. Client expects the hours, he said. Bill the time, tweak the numbers, move on. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, June asleep in the other room, and I felt this weird mix of relief and nausea. Like I was cheating on a test, but the grade was survival. I worked quietly, like I was doing something shameful, which I guess I was. That first week, I moved a bunch of travel expenses into vendor development, deleted anything labeled entertainment, and added vague notes about client outreach. Mason said I was a natural, called it ethically flexible bookkeeping. The direct deposit hit the next morning. $2,000. Just like that. I stood there, staring at the screen, almost in shock. Not a bonus. Not overtime. Just there. I paid the rent within an hour. Picked up groceries, filled the gas tank, bought June a new pair of shoes. Ones with light-up soles she kept pointing at in the store window. She smiled like the sun when she put them on. That smile? It made everything feel worth it. I told myself I was doing this for her. That weekend, we went out for pancakes. Nothing fancy, just the diner off Route 12. June spilled syrup on the booth, told me she was going to be an astronaut. I smiled and nodded, pretending I was not terrified of how far I had already drifted from who I used to be. The next Monday, Mason offered me another file. This one came from a nonprofit, some education grant group trying to hide the fact that they were spending public funds on high-end hotels. He said, "Can you make it look like professional development travel?" I asked, "Is it?" He laughed. "Does it matter?" And again, I said yes. It was just a spreadsheet. Just a few words changed. But with every job, I felt like I was chiseling away at something inside me. A corner here, a sliver there. I still looked the same in the mirror, but I did not feel the same. I told no one. Not even Rachel, my ex, who I had just started talking to again. Texts here and there about June's school stuff. Then longer ones about, how are you holding up? Late night kind of messages. Part of me thought if this kept going, maybe I could fix what we broke. Maybe I could build something good, using bad bricks. Then Mason called me directly. Said a new client wanted someone discreet. Who? I asked. His voice got lower. Real estate firm in upstate New York. Doing some cash reclassification. It is not technically laundering. They just want to smooth out the books before tax season. I asked how much. He said, for grand. For grand. I remember walking into June's room that night, watching her sleep under a blanket with cartoon planets, and thinking, I could give her everything. No more telling her no. No more pretending I was fine. So I made my choice. But right as I shut her door, something inside me whispered, this is not going to stay small. By the end of that month, I had cleared more than 12 grand. More money than I had ever made legally in 3 months, let alone 4 weeks. My bank account finally stopped looking like a countdown to zero. I caught up on the bills. I took June to the aquarium. I even paid back Rachel the $300 I borrowed last year during the layoff. She said I didn't have to, but I could tell it meant something. She started texting me more after that. I upgraded my truck, used, but reliable. We moved out of the cramped 2-bedroom rental into a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Beige siding. Quiet neighbors. A patch of backyard big enough for June to run around in. People at June's school noticed the change. The teachers smiled different. Moms who used to look right through me started saying things like, looks like things are finally turning around for you. And I would nod, with that fake modest smile. The one people wear when they're holding on to a secret that feels too heavy to speak aloud. The work kept coming. Mason was good at staying just on the safe side of illegal. I never signed anything. No names. No paper trail. Clients paid in cryptocurrency or wired through shell companies. I never asked who they were. I told myself I didn't want to know. Each gig had a story. A hedge fund that needed to optimize capital gains. A hospital group moving expenses between foundations. A tech startup inflating early revenue to woo investors. I convinced myself I was just formatting cells, balancing columns, smoothing wrinkles. Not stealing. Not hurting anyone. No victims, right? But some nights I would lie awake in that new house, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, and the silence would get loud. That sharp little voice in the back of my head started whispering things I didn't want to hear. You're not fixing things. You're hiding them. You're not saving your daughter's future. You're just burying your own. But then I would see June's backpack on the chair, her drawing on the fridge, that shaky crayon version of us under a rainbow. And I would tell myself, one more month. Just one more. The real trouble started when Rachel came by for dinner. I had grilled chicken and roasted potatoes ready, real napkins on the table, even lit a candle. June sat between us, talking about some space project she was doing in class. Everything felt almost normal, until Rachel looked at me and said, I'm happy for you. You seem more at peace. That line hit like a brick. Because the truth, I hadn't slept a full night in weeks. I was waking up with jaw pain from grinding my teeth. I jumped every time the phone rang from an unknown number. I kept my laptop password protected like it held the launch codes. But on the outside, I looked like a guy who finally figured it out. The house was clean. The lights were on. June was smiling. And Rachel looked at me like maybe, she could trust me again. Then she asked the question I had been dreading. So what is this new job exactly? I froze. And just like that, I realized something. It wasn't the work that was killing me. It was the lying. I dodged Rachel's question that night. Said something vague about remote consulting. Told her I was helping small businesses clean up their books for tax season. She nodded slowly, not quite believing me, but not pushing either. That was the moment I knew. I had crossed over. Because lying to strangers is easy. Lying to the people who used to know your heartbeat? That eats at something deeper. The next morning, I got a message from Mason. Short and cold. Client number 7 wants to talk to you directly. He'll call at 3. That was new. I never spoke to the clients. That was our rule. No names, no voices. Just files, payments, silence. But this guy? He wanted a call. 3 o'clock came, and right on the dot, my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail at first. But then another text from Mason came through. Pick up. He's important. So I answered. The voice on the other end was smooth. Not friendly, but polite. Like a lawyer or a politician. He introduced himself as Mr. Langston. No first name, no company mentioned. He said, "I understand you're the man behind the curtain, the fixer." I told him I was just helping with financial reviews. He chuckled. "Let us not waste each other's time, friend. I need 3 months of invoices cleaned and recategorized, backdated appropriately. There may be some donor overlap we do not want the auditors to flag." That last line hit different. Donor overlap. That usually meant hush money, or double-dipping from a nonprofit and a for-profit wing of the same organization. Either way, it was not gray anymore. It was dark. I should have said no. Instead, I asked, "What is the rate?" He said, 10,000. "Half now. Half when you finish." 10,000. That was more than I made in 4 months before all this started. I said, "Send me the files." After I hung up, I sat there staring at the wall for a long time. The room felt too quiet, too still, like the air had changed. And then something strange happened. Rachel showed up again that evening. Said June left her math book in the car. But I could tell from the way she lingered that she wanted to talk. She looked around the house and said, "You know, this place feels bigger than what you told me you were making." I forced a smile. It was a lucky month. But she was not buying it. She stepped closer and asked, "Mike, you are not doing anything sketchy, are you?" That word. Sketchy. Not criminal. Not evil. Just off. I wanted to lie again. Instead, I changed the subject. That night, I poured a glass of whiskey and opened the files from Mr. Langston. First line, private security budget, reimbursements. Second line, campaign entertainment, undisclosed. And that was the first time I truly felt fear. Because this was not just messy numbers anymore. This was politics. This was power. And if I made one wrong move, the people I was working for, they would not send a warning. They would make me disappear. I told myself I could handle it. Just one more job. Finish it, get the money, disappear from Mason's radar for good. But you cannot bargain with a storm once you have stepped into it. Langston's files were cleaner than most, which made them scarier. These were not the sloppy kind of lies from people desperate to survive. These were precise, surgical manipulations, the kind designed by people who had lawyers on speed dial. Everything was coded, abbreviations, numbered accounts, vague line items that could mean anything. Event support, public relations travel, consultant disbursement. But there was one number that kept popping up, an account ending in 1776. It appeared again and again, tucked into every spreadsheet, like a shadow behind the curtain. Transfers in, transfers out, always for the same amounts, always just before reporting deadlines. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed the trail. The 1776 account wasn't under any company I could find. It was personal. The name attached? Langston Development Trust. I did some digging, quietly. Turns out, Langston wasn't just some business guy. He was on a regional board overseeing public funding for housing development. The donors in his files, they were construction firms, bid contractors, and consulting agencies that were all supposed to be competing fairly. Except they were not competing. They were paying him. And I was the one making it all look legitimate. For the first time, I felt real panic. Not the kind that comes from overdue bills, but the kind that comes from realizing you are now part of something you cannot explain away. I tried calling Mason, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I texted him, "Who is this guy?" He replied an hour later, "Do not ask questions. Just finish the job." So I did, but not before making a copy of the files. A habit I had picked up from paranoia more than anything. I saved them on a flash drive, labeled it taxes, and tucked it under the drawer liner of my nightstand. That night, sleep did not come easy. I kept thinking about June down the hall, how small her world still was, how untouched by this mess. She believed her dad worked with numbers. And technically, she was right. But the numbers I was working with could ruin people, maybe even get them hurt. The next morning, I found Mason waiting outside my house. First time he had ever shown up in person. He leaned against a black car, wearing sunglasses, smiling like he owned the world. "You are in deeper than you realize, Mike," he said. I told him I was done. He just laughed. "You are done when they are done with you. You have talent, and that makes you valuable." He handed me an envelope. 10,000 in cash. Real bills. Crisp. Perfect. Then he leaned closer. "Langston is happy, which means you are safe, for now." He turned and started to walk off, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. Back up everything. Never keep just one copy. When he drove away, I stood there, envelope in hand, watching the taillights fade. That was the first moment I realized something awful. I had been so busy trying to hide what I was doing that I had forgotten the simplest truth. In the world I was now part of, numbers might lie for people, but they never lie about them. And the ones I just cleaned? They were about to expose everyone, including me. 2 weeks later, it all started to unravel. It began with a letter. No knock on the door. No warning. Just a plain white envelope slipped into my mailbox between a grocery flyer and an oil change coupon. It was from the Office of Grant Oversight and Compliance, and it had my name on it. My real name. Not some company. Not a client. Me. I opened it right there on the porch, heart pounding. Routine audit related to past consulting services provided to Langston Development Trust. I read the sentence over and over again. That was not a routine audit. That was a warning shot. I went inside, closed all the blinds, and locked the door. I should have been invisible. I was never listed on contracts. Never signed anything. But somewhere, somehow, my fingerprints were on something I touched. And now the people I had helped bury were being dug up, and my name was about to be pulled into the light with them. I texted Mason. Audit. They named me. What do I do? He never replied. That night, I went looking for him online. His LinkedIn was gone. His number disconnected. The business site we used? Wiped. Just a 404 error and a dead redirect. He had vanished, which meant I was next. The next morning, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened to it, the voice was clipped. Corporate. Mr. Thompson, this is Abigail Chun from the Audit Division. We need to schedule an in-person interview. Interview. That word sounded harmless. But I knew better. This was not about compliance. This was about who gets blamed. I knew how this worked. Langston would deny everything. His lawyers would spin stories until the truth was buried under paperwork and power. And me? I would be the nameless nobody who fudged the numbers. A fall guy. The cleaner who took it too far. I had two choices. Lie. Or give them something bigger. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out the flash drive. The one labeled taxes. Still tucked under the drawer liner. Exactly where I had left it. I spent hours printing everything. Every invoice, every file, every trace of the edits I had made. I highlighted names, accounts, timelines. I wrote a note on top of the stack. I was not the architect, just the janitor. Then I put the whole thing in a sealed envelope and mailed it to Abigail Chen's office. No return address. Just one phrase scribbled across the back in black Sharpie. You're asking the wrong guy. That night, I sat on my back porch staring into the dark, trying to imagine what would happen next. Would they arrest me? Would they knock on my door? Would Rachel find out? Would June hear it on the news? My stomach turned. My head ached. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. And then the phone buzzed. It was Rachel. One message. Hey, did you see the news? My fingers froze. Because I knew what she was about to say. Something had broken. And I was no longer behind the curtain. I was center stage. I tapped the message from Rachel and sat there, heart racing. She sent a link to a local news site. Breaking. Anonymous documents leak reveal financial misconduct in Regional Housing Authority. Langston's name was in the headline. The article talked about falsified records, duplicate grants, campaign funds rerouted through shell companies, and one anonymous whistleblower who sent the evidence in unmarked mail. They had verified the documents. There were already subpoenas flying. Journalists were foaming at the mouth. Langston was on video the next day, flanked by two stiff-suited lawyers, denying everything. Smear campaign, he said. Political attack. But he looked rattled. The kind of rattled that no PR consultant could fix. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because just below that article was another headline. Internal contractor named in records. Feds investigating possible fraud. There it was. My name. Michael Thompson. Buried halfway through the article, like an afterthought. But it was there. And now, it was real. Within a day, I lost the part-time tax prep gig I had picked up for extra cash. My name was trending in local Facebook groups. One post called me a paper criminal. Another one called me a genius turned fraud. My landlord stopped by, awkward, fidgety, and said the HOA was concerned about press exposure. I knew what that meant. It meant I had to start packing. The worst part? I still had to pick June up from school that afternoon. I sat in the car watching her walk across the parking lot in her little blue jacket, clutching a craft project in both hands. She waved when she saw me, eyes full of joy. No clue what was happening. No idea that everything was crumbling underneath her feet. I held it together until bedtime. Then I sat in the kitchen, lights off, staring at a table I used to be proud of. The new house. The nice truck. The fridge with actual food in it. All of it built on rotten wood. My phone buzzed again. It was Rachel. She had seen the article. She did not say much, just asked if it was true. I told her yes. That was the first honest thing I had said in months. She replied 2 minutes later. You lied to me. To June. I defended you. I wanted to text back. To explain. But what was I supposed to say? I lied because I wanted to be a better man. I stole from the system so I could be a hero at home. I put the phone down and looked at the wall. It was the first thing I had painted when we moved in. Light gray. Clean. Neutral. The color of control. Now it felt like a backdrop for disaster. The next morning, there were 2 people in suits waiting outside the house. Not cops. Worse. Federal investigators. 1 man, 1 woman. Badges, not guns. They were polite. Professional. But I knew why they were here. I let them in. Offered them coffee I couldn't taste. Sat down at the table I once bought with money I could not admit to earning. The man asked the first question. Mr. Thompson, would you like to explain your role in this? I looked at him. Then I looked at June's space project still taped to the fridge. And I said 4 words that sealed my fate. I can explain everything. I told them everything. Took over an hour. No lawyer. No strategy. Just the truth, laid bare like bones on a table. How it started with a spreadsheet. How Mason reeled me in with just enough money to blur the line between survival and compromise. How 1 lie led to 10. How the guilt came later, way later. And how I tried to walk away right when it was too late to matter. They barely blinked. Took notes. Asked calm, cold questions. Did you ever meet Langston in person? No. Did you know where the money was going? Not at first. But yes, eventually. Did you knowingly alter reports to mislead state or federal reviewers? I nodded. The agent, Chun, closed her notebook with a quiet click. We'll be in touch, she said. Then they left. Just like that. No cuffs. No warning. No shouting. Somehow that was worse. Because now I had to wait. I sat there in that silence, listening to the fridge hum and the house creak. I looked around and saw all the little things I had once been proud of. Furniture we picked out, curtains Rachel helped hang, the swing set I built for June in the backyard. All of it poisoned now. Bought with money that never belonged to me. A few days passed. The news kept rolling. Langston's face was everywhere. Arrest. Indictment. Bail denied. There were rumors about other officials, campaign money, entire systems rigged by people who looked polished in suits, but left filth in their wake. Some people called me a hero online, said I was brave to come forward. They did not know the whole story. I was not brave. I just got scared too late. Rachel stopped returning messages. She brought June by once to pick up a few things, her stuffed animals, her telescope, the lava lamp from her nightstand. She did not come inside. June gave me a hug, said she missed me, then ran back to the car. Rachel never looked up. She drove away like I was already gone. The final nail came 2 weeks later, an official letter this time. No hand delivery, just a formal warning of prosecution, possible sentencing, and a court date. It said I was being charged as a cooperative witness with material involvement. Basically, a whistleblower with dirt on his own hands. I would not go to prison, but everything else, gone. The money, the house, the reputation, the job. Custody negotiations were coming, and Rachel made it clear she wanted full. I could visit. Maybe. And just like that, I went from provider to pariah. I walked through the empty house that night. No pictures on the walls. No toys in the corner. Just echo. I stood in June's room. Bare mattress, empty shelves, and I whispered a promise to the quiet. Never again. No more shortcuts. No more lies. But the truth? I wasn't sure I believed it yet. Not completely. 3 weeks passed. I was living in a studio above a garage owned by a guy named Wes. Mold in the shower, 1 flickering light, and a draft that came through the outlets. Rent was cheap. No questions asked. That was all I needed. I worked under the table at a warehouse, moving pallets, hauling boxes. My body hurt in ways it hadn't since my 20s. But the pain felt honest. Like penance. I spent evenings writing letters to June I never mailed. I'd sit with a pen in my hand and stare at a blank page for hours, trying to explain why her dad had done what he did. Then I'd crumble them up and throw them in the trash. Because how do you explain betrayal to a kid who still believes in moon landings and bedtime stories? Then came the envelope. No return address. Tucked under the door one morning. Inside was a single piece of paper. No threats. No signature. Just one sentence, typed in black ink. You should not have talked. That cold, familiar weight hit my chest again. It was not over. Not by a long shot. I tore apart the apartment looking for more. Nothing. I checked under the car. Around the windows. Paranoia kicked in like it had been waiting in the wings this whole time. I called the number Agent Chun left me, told her about the message. She went quiet for a second, then asked, "Have you had contact with anyone from the Mason group?" I said no. And that was the truth. Mason had disappeared. Or so I thought. Until I saw him. 2 nights later, I was leaving work, late shift at the warehouse. Street was empty except for a black sedan idling by the corner. As I walked toward my car, the driver's window rolled down. There he was. Mason. Same smug face. Same calm posture. Only this time, no smile. He said one thing. Some things aren't forgiven. Not in this world. Then he drove off. No threats. No promises. Just a warning. That night I did not sleep. I sat in the dark holding a hammer from the toolbox under my bed, listening for footsteps, watching the window, not because I thought he would come back that night, but because I knew someone would. I had tried to fix things, tried to come clean, but dirty money? It never stays buried. Even when you confess, even when you lose everything, it leaves fingerprints on your soul. And people like Mason, they do not forget the man who broke the code. They say once you hit rock bottom, you can start rebuilding. But no one tells you what it feels like to live there for a while. No applause. No redemption arc. Just days that bleed into each other and silence that never stops echoing. The feds kept their promise. I testified. I turned over everything. Langston went down. So did 3 others. It made headlines for a while, then disappeared beneath the next scandal. Mason vanished again. The threats stopped, but the damage did not. Rachel won full custody. I get supervised visits. Twice a month. 2 hours at a time. In a library room with glass walls and a caseworker at the door. June still hugs me like nothing happened. But I can see it, the question in her eyes. The one she's too young to ask, but already feels. Why did you break the rules, Dad? The truth? I do not have a good answer. At first, I told myself it was to save us. Then I told myself it was just temporary. But deep down, I think I liked how it felt. To win. To not be scared. To finally walk into a room and feel like I belonged. But it came at a price. Because the house is gone. The job. The reputation. The people I love. They look at me like a stranger now. Even when they smile. You want to know what hurts the most? It is not the arrest. Or the trial. Or the loss. It is knowing that everything I built, the comfort, the praise, the second chance with Rachel, it was all conditional. None of it lasted once the truth came out. Even the people I helped turned away. Mason made me rich. Langston made me useful. And the moment I stopped being either, I was expendable. Now, I work at a hardware store. I sweep floors. Unload shipments. Sell drill bits and paint cans. My name tag says Mike. And no one asks for anything more than that. And maybe that is a blessing. Because for the first time, I do not have to lie about who I am. I go home to a one-room apartment with a leaking sink and peeling paint. I eat dinner from the same pan I cook in. I write letters to June, and sometimes I actually mail them. I tell her about the stars. About how she can still be an astronaut. And I do not talk about the past. Not because I am hiding it, but because she deserves a version of life where the good guys do not sell their souls just to survive. I ask myself sometimes if I was wrong. The answer is yes. But that is not the real question. The real question is this. Now that everything is gone, who do I choose to be when no one is watching? And the answer? I do not know yet. But this time, I am going to find out the right way.